If you're pregnant and considering a vaginal birth after cesarean, you are not alone. More and more women are choosing to have their babies vaginally despite having had a previous C-section. But before making this decision, it's important to understand both the benefits and risks of VBAC, which stands for vaginal birth after cesarean. And that is what we're going to talk about today. I'm your trusted source for all things pregnancy and motherhood. And in this episode of our series, we're talking all about VBAC, which stands for vaginal birth after cesarean. A planned VBAC means that you are planning to give birth vaginally if you have had a previous cesarean birth. Now, most people think that once you've had a cesarean section, you always have to have your babies via C-section. This is not true. In fact, many women who've had one cesarean section go on to deliver vaginally without any problems. That being said, there are some risks involved in delivering vaginally after having a cesarean birth. So if you're thinking about VBAC, it is really important that you understand those risks as well as the risks of another cesarean section so that you can make an informed decision about how you want to give birth. When you meet with your care provider, they will ask you questions about your previous surgery to determine if it is safe for you to attempt VBAC. They will also perform an exam to check your incision and see if you are likely to have enough room for a vaginal delivery if you choose that option. Your care provider may also run blood tests to assess your risk for certain complications during childbirth. Now, these tests include checking your blood type and doing a complete blood count, a clotting test, as well as a test to check for certain proteins in your blood that indicate whether or not you might have a problem with excessive bleeding after delivery. So let's start with what are the advantages of VBAC. The first one is shorter hospital stay. On average, women who have vaginal delivery stay in the hospital only 1 day compared to 2 to 3 days following a cesarean birth. With a vaginal birth, you'll also get to go home sooner and get back into your own bed. Plus, you'll be able to drive your car sooner instead of having to wait for someone to drive you around. The second advantage of VBAC is faster recovery. As a general rule, your body recovers faster from a vaginal delivery than from a cesarean section. And this means that you'll probably feel better faster. You'll also typically experience less postpartum pain. You'll have fewer restrictions on lifting and you'll bounce back to your normal routine much quicker. A third advantage of VBAC is bonding. Some studies have shown that skin-to-skin contact immediately after birth helps increase bonding between you and your baby. Now, this is especially true for babies born via vaginal delivery because during a cesarean section, your baby is separated from you for a longer period of time. Of course, even if your second baby is born via vaginal delivery, you'll still be separated from them for a few minutes while they are being cleaned off and dried and checked by the medical team. But this separation is usually no more than 10 or 15 minutes. Another advantage of VBAC is breastfeeding. Now, don't get me wrong, you can absolutely breastfeed if your baby is born via cesarean section. However, research shows that women who have vaginal deliveries are more successful at breastfeeding than women who have had a cesarean birth. This is likely because babies born vaginally spend time passing through the birth canal where they are bathed in what is called the vernix, which smells strongly of amniotic fluid and is thought to help stimulate the newborn's sense of smell and promote breastfeeding. VBAC can also mean lower costs. Now, this is something to keep in mind. Typically, cesarean sections cost more than vaginal deliveries. Not only are hospital stays longer, but the surgery itself is more expensive too. If you have vaginal delivery, you're also less likely to require a hospital stay in the NICU, meaning that you won't have extra expenses associated with that as well. And lastly, avoiding a major abdominal surgery is definitely a huge benefit of choosing VBAC. So now let's talk about the risks of VBAC. There is an increased risk of uterine rupture. This is a rare but serious complication of VBAC. Rupture means that the scar on your uterus, which forms after a prior C-section, opens up during labor. Uterine rupture occurs in about 1 in 1,600 pregnancies when a woman attempts VBAC. If this does happen to you, both you and your baby will need emergency surgery. That being said, if you have a low transverse incision like the majority of women do, your risk of uterine rupture is even lower. Another risk of VBAC is the risk of infection. Infection is a risk of any surgery, and since a cesarean section is major surgery, women who have had a prior cesarean are at higher risk of developing an infection after surgery than women who give birth vaginally. And last but certainly not least, there is an increased risk of hysterectomy. Attempting VBAC does put you at slightly higher risk of needing a hysterectomy, which means the surgical removal of your uterus during delivery. This risk is very small, occurring in about 1 in 1,000 pregnancies. But it is something to consider when weighing your options for birth. So what about the risks of having another cesarean birth? Well, the good news is that for the most part, having 2 or more cesareans doesn't increase your risk of any complications, including uterine rupture. The main disadvantage of having another cesarean section is missing out on the benefits of giving birth vaginally. So once you weigh the risks and benefits of each option, then you can decide what's best for you. If you'd like more information to help you make your decision, just let your care provider know. They can provide you with additional resources and support as you work through this process. In fact, there are 3 things that I would recommend you do right now to help you make the best choice for you and your baby. Number 1, I recommend reading a book or 2 about VBAC. One of my favorites is called Vaginal Birth After Cesarean, A Couple's Guide to Preparing for VBAC by Mary Jane Minkin and Laura Riley. Number 2, I recommend joining a support group for women who are planning to have a VBAC. Online groups are a great way to connect with other women who are going through the same thing as you. And number 3, I recommend watching the rest of my videos about VBAC and cesarean birth. You can find the playlist link below. Before we wrap up, I want to remind you that you're not alone as you navigate this decision. Reach out to your partner, friends, family members, and your care team as you work through this process. Remember, there is no right or wrong answer. The best choice for you may not be the same as the best choice for your friend or for your sister. Ultimately, the decision of whether or not to have a repeat cesarean section or to attempt VBAC is completely up to you. Thank you so much for joining me today. If you enjoyed this video, please leave us a like and subscribe to our channel to join us back here every week for a new episode. Wishing you a pregnancy and a birth that is happy and healthy.